Hi, everyone. I'm David Damato, and I'm the Chief Security Officer at Gemini. Gemini is the world's most trusted cryptocurrency exchange and custodian. And today I wanted to share some of the work we've done with FIDO2 over the past few years. HODL is a term you may have heard about before. It has its origins in a 2013 Bitcoin forum post in which a user mistyped "I am holding" as "I am hodling." So I thought it'd be a great way to introduce everyone to a core term in crypto and highlight my passion for hodling. Before we begin, I wanted to share a bit about me and what it is we're doing at Gemini. I've spent the past 20 years in security, beginning in the defense industry, working at a company called Raytheon as a network engineer, spending time at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I performed penetration tests and incident response investigations. I was an early member of the leadership team at Mandiant, where I helped expand the consulting practice and responded to about 100 breaches. And I was the first security hire at Tanium, where I helped to build a mature information security program. Much of my career has been focused on preventing and responding to incidents, and strong two-factor authentication is at the core of preventing the vast majority of attacks. And that's the reason why I'm so enthusiastic to talk to you today about FIDO2. At Gemini, I'm specifically focused on protecting our customers and their crypto. Gemini was founded by Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss. They were some of the earliest and largest investors in Bitcoin. Early on, they realized that they needed a secure place to store their crypto, but it was challenging to find trustworthy companies where they could safely purchase, trade, and store their crypto. So they created Gemini, where trust is our product. We are also very focused on compliance. We believe that in order to ensure broader adoption of crypto and best protect our customers, we need to partner with regulators. Our primary regulator is the NYDFS, New York Department of Financial Services. In addition to working with the DFS, other regulators around the world, Gemini is also a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant cryptocurrency exchange and custodian. And you can find more about Gemini's security program on our website at www.gemini.com/security. We also have an amazing security team that is very passionate about secure authentication. That includes Nick Steele, who sits on the W3C for WebAuthn, and Rich Smith, formerly head of Duo Labs. That passion extends into our products. We're the only exchange to support FIDO2 for both web and our mobile app. For all of these reasons, we thought it would be very helpful to share our journey with FIDO2 today. So let's get started. There are three topics I wanted to discuss today. What makes FIDO2 so important for the crypto industry? How do our customers use FIDO2? What did we learn over the past 2 years supporting our customers and encouraging them to adopt more secure forms of authentication? And finally, I'd like to share some lessons learned that might assist others in their own journey towards supporting FIDO2 for their customers. Crypto is a bit different than traditional finance. In many ways, it's more secure, but it also requires a different approach to security, especially when it comes to ATOs. ATOs, or account takeovers, come in many shapes and sizes, but for us specifically, we're concerned about preventing criminals from withdrawing crypto as a result of an account takeover. There are a few reasons why ATOs within crypto are different than at traditional financial institutions. So let's take a look at those. I'm going to speak very generally about cryptocurrency today. There are a lot of cryptocurrencies. Most, but not all, will exhibit these three properties I'm about to describe. First, cryptocurrencies are trustless. Users of cryptocurrencies don't need to know or trust each other for the system to work as expected. It's also decentralized. There are no centralized entities. For example, there's no one company that owns a cryptocurrency that you can actually call. And it's immutable. Transactions are generally final. So in crypto, once you make a transaction, it's generally finalized within minutes. There's no centralized entities. So unlike a bank transfer, there's no way to cancel a transaction and get your money back a day or two later. There's also no company to call. On the one hand, this is great, quick and final transactions, but it's also a challenge for us, especially when considering ATOs. An ATO could result in the immediate loss of someone's crypto. Let's talk about the common types of ATOs and how we might mitigate risk simply and easily with varying forms of two-factor authentication. A simple ATO is one that is usually where a criminal obtains credentials and uses them immediately. So something like a username and a password. This commonly follows a few simple steps. First, the attacker will harvest credentials, and that's usually going to come from either malware or a previously compromised service or website. It can also be facilitated by phishing. Next, they're going to test the credentials for specific services. We call this credential stuffing, where the attacker makes sure the credentials actually work. And then for those credentials that are successful, they'll either sell them or use them to target the users directly. Some companies may have you verify a new device via email. But if a customer reusing a password for both their email, but if a customer reuses a password for both their email account and their service account, this doesn't make much of a difference. So in review, this is the most common form of ATO. Most users reuse passwords, so email verification for new devices is great, but not perfect. And this is the least expensive attack with the lowest bar to entry. So anyone is really capable of performing this type of simple ATO. Given how simple ATOs, how easy a simple ATO is, many companies have or are moving to SMS 2FA. When SMS 2FA is required, an attacker will need to perform a SIM swap. SIM swapping occurs when an attacker socially engineers your carrier into switching your number to a new SIM card that they control. This is commonly done via phone support, in a store with fake credentials, or by paying off a carrier's employees. As an organization that requires, at a minimum, SMS 2FA, I can tell you that SIM swaps do occur, but represent a much more costly attack than a simple ATO. So let's review a common SIM swap attack. The attacker walks into your mobile carrier's store with a fake ID and convinces them to move your phone number to their mobile phone. If the attacker already has credentials, your credentials, then they can intercept the SMS 2FA code and log on. If they don't yet have your credentials, they'll simply take over a user's email via SMS recovery. What you may not realize is that many popular email providers use SMS codes for account recovery. And with access to email, they can simply reset the target's credentials on whatever service they like. With credentials and access to your phone number, they can then log on, receive and enter the correct SMS code, and access your account. Comparatively speaking, this is significantly harder than compromising your username and password, but it's not insurmountable for most organized criminals. Due to SIM swapping, some services now support time-based one-time passwords, or TOTP. And although I'm unaware of any right now that actually require it, TOTP is better than SMS 2FA, but it introduces a lot of friction. This includes initial setup, use, and challenges in transferring TOTP to a new device after losing an existing device or upgrading to a new device. So what does an attack against TOTP look like? In many cases, people store their backup codes in email or online storage. So SIM swap may be able to successfully defeat TOTP. I see this happen frequently within the crypto community. People take pictures of their backup codes, which end up on Drive or Google Photos or somewhere else. But the majority of time, social engineering is required to defeat TOTP. In this case, the attacker has the credentials most likely, and they just need the second factor. And in this case, they'll ask for the TOTP code or for a user to authorize a new device or TOTP authenticator. The most common scam is support scams. A scammer will either call a user or set up passive websites and wait for people to contact them. The end result is the same, compromise of the second factor code. So what's the TLDR here? TOTP is more secure than SMS because it should be effectively offline, but generally backup codes are physically printed and stored. If backup codes are physically printed and secured securely, users should be secure. Also, users should not give up their code due to some sort of social engineering scheme. But in the reality of things, many users store their backup codes online and reveal their codes when socially engineered. And honestly, TOTP can introduce a good deal of friction and increases support calls for organizations. Now, I didn't talk about it, but obviously TOTP is susceptible to phishing. If TOTP is susceptible to phishing, so are SMS codes. This is in addition to SIM swapping, which we already discussed. So how do you prevent ATOs when an attacker can either SIM swap a user or socially engineer a user to defeat SMS or TOTP 2FA? Easy, FIDO. 2 years ago, we wanted to offer our customers the highest level of security possible, and we did this by supporting FIDO 2. In the previous slides, we discussed the challenges of protecting 2FA codes. FIDO 2 is designed to overcome these challenges and dramatically increase the cost for an attacker. With FIDO 2, there is no second factor code or password that can be shared by our customers. This is why FIDO 2 is phishing resistant. There's no SMS code to capture or share. There's no TOTP code to share. There are no backup codes. There are no images. It's a more user-friendly experience. And at worst, I simply enter my username and password, then push a button. FIDO 2 mitigates replay attacks as well, which occur when an attacker attempts the person in the middle, a customer. And finally, the benefit to me as a company is that I don't actually store or manage FIDO 2 credentials. For these reasons, in early 2019, Gemini was the first exchange to launch support for FIDO 2. That included platform and cross-platform authenticators, including Touch ID, Windows Hello, USB, NFC, Bluetooth, and Lightning. Our implementation requires 2 keys, a primary and a backup. We did this to facilitate the best possible experience. Keep in mind that if a user loses their FIDO 2 authenticator, the bar for account recovery should be extremely high. It can't be a text or SMS or their social security number. We wanted to avoid the chances a recovery was even required to minimize the impact on our support organization and users, and that's why we required 2 keys. You don't actually have to do that. We also became the first exchange to support FIDO 2 on our mobile app. This ensured that we provided the same experience and support for all our users, regardless of their second factor solution. This is incredibly important as many implementations actually break functionality in order to support FIDO 2. And understandably, this typically results in poor user adoption when you're only supporting one medium. We ran into some issues, especially on mobile. We discovered that not all SDKs are created equal. We ran into some compatibility issues for certain NFC devices on iPhones, especially when using the Yubico SDK for iOS. You also have to decide if you want to support enrollment on both web and mobile. That'll depend on your products and your customers. Let's talk about a few numbers that demonstrate the benefit of FIDO 2 from our usage. Today, approximately 5% of our users rely on FIDO 2. Most people I speak with feel that number is a little bit small, but we think we're actually doing pretty well considering the minimal investment we've made and the fact that it's a new technology that isn't ubiquitous. Keep in mind that many of these customers actually purchased the FIDO 2 authenticator. They're paying for security. That is why I'm very confident that this number will continue to improve over time, especially as FIDO 2 authenticators are part of the devices we carry on us and better understood. From a business perspective, there were a few benefits. We never had a user compromise that is associated with FIDO 2 authenticators. And that's a tremendous cost savings to us. It limits the impact on our customer support, our trust and safety teams, and the potential for any regulatory or legal challenges. And as you'd expect, customers with more crypto are more concerned about security. So we saw new and existing customers with higher notional balances more quickly adopt the use of FIDO. So there's actually a competitive advantage here where customers can switch from one exchange to another to get improved security and a better cross-platform experience with the support of both web and mobile and FIDO 2. When we started offering support for FIDO 2 authenticators back in 2019, it was used by less than 1% of our customers. So how did we improve adoption closer to 5%? The first and easiest thing we did was trying to send emails out, marketing emails. And apparently people ignore marketing emails because it had very little effect. Then we extended to mobile, ensuring the experience was the same regardless of how you authenticated. And this made a very big difference. We immediately saw usage of FIDO authenticators increase. So it's safe to assume that if you don't extend the same level of functionality and support, it'll only be used by people like me who are pretty paranoid. The most effective method for driving adoption was actually marketing spend. We created blogs, engaged with influencers on Twitter, and partnered with Yubico to provide promotional pricing and giveaways. This had the most dramatic impact, bringing us to the current levels we see today at 5%. We also tried gifting. we sent 50 customers to FIDO2 authenticators with NFC, USB Type A, and Type C connectors. So something that was pretty compatible. We also sent some swag and some detailed instructions, even made some videos. And surprisingly, this was a big failure. Only 2 of the 50 customers actually enabled and used their FIDO2 authenticators. So we're currently working on ways in which we can add additional features and improved usability for customers that opt to use FIDO2 authenticators. And we're pretty excited about continue the experiment with FIDO2 adoption and hope that our efforts will help in driving standardization around future deployments. The last year has taught us a lot about FIDO2 use in an organization like Gemini. Here are some takeaways. SMS is good. Everyone should start there. It's low friction, eliminates basic fraud and abuse, and please, at a minimum, support this. It creates a more secure ecosystem of services on the internet. TOTP is definitely better, but it's still vulnerable to phishing and introduces friction. You have to find the code, remember to migrate before trading in phones. You need to keep backup code secure. I actually think you'll see TOTP replaced by the emergence of passkey over the next few years. It's easier and has similar effectiveness in the proposed implementation by Microsoft, Google, and Apple. FIDO2 significantly raises the cost for attackers. It's so expensive that there are no really great examples of exploitation. SDK support by vendor also varies, so keep that in mind. Based on our experience, mobile support was the biggest unknown. NFC support varies by vendor SDK and mobile hardware. And generally, the browser compatibility issues that were the biggest barrier to entry in the past are no longer a problem. Adoption is also difficult. So far, marketing has worked the best. My thoughts on this is that we haven't hit a tipping point yet. Not everyone has 2 authenticators, and most people aren't going to pay for them. And so until the authenticators are ubiquitous and free, I'm certain adoption will remain limited compared to SMS and TOTP. And finally, account recovery must be as strong as the authentication you're using. I can't tell you how many times that I've worked with a bank or another financial institution where I use something like TOTP, and when I call them to reset my credentials, they simply send me an SMS 2-factor code or request some basic personal information. If you want to ensure the security of a FIDO2 implementation, you'll need to up-level your game around authenticating customers when they call into customer support for issues. Thanks so much for listening to me talk about our experience with FIDO2, and I'm looking forward to answering questions during our panel discussion.